Boom! Thursdays here with your host of the Codex podcast, Sonny Kruger. Today I will be reviewing Boom Studios' Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer #1. It is written by Casey Gilley, illustrated by Joe Jarrow, and colored by Joanna LaFuente. This is Buffy the Vampire Slayer's, continuance. Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer. And this takes place in the not-so-distant future. Humans and vampires are now getting along. There's been a treaty that said the two can coexist and live together and be fine, not to harm each other. Due to dark magic, the sun has been dampened, so vampires get to walk around all day without the sunlight affecting them. Well, we know Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, and now she's in her 50s. And in the beginning, she starts off going to a bar in London. Buffy's not the same. You see her hands are wrapped up. She looks a bit wounded. She's worn out. She goes to this vampire bar, and she just wants a drink. She wants to be left alone. And suddenly she gets a nosebleed, and all the vampires start looking at her. And before you know, Buffy says, okay, I need to get out of here. She leaves, and the vampires start chasing her. Then, before you know it, Buffy finds herself running away from them. She knows she can beat them. She's hiding, even though she's saying to herself, this is pathetic. I'm so pathetic. So she runs away. She goes back to her place, where she still speaks to Giles, her mentor, even though he's not there anymore. And she looks at a picture of him, and she feels very embarrassed, and she just basically hates the way things are going. She hugs his picture, and she goes to sleep. When Buffy goes to sleep, she has a nightmare / flashback from what I believe is years previous. And it's of a meeting that happened where it looked like there was going to be upcoming slayers that she was going to work with, young ladies like her. And suddenly a group comes. You don't see who they are. They're all wearing masks. And they hit this bomb, and boom, another huge explosion. And, the first explosion of the comic. And you see many people die. Many are dead. Buffy's surrounded by death, and that was pretty much the end of that. So she wakes up, she punches the wall, hurts her hand again, and she remembers that day. That day seems to haunt Buffy, where she remembered all those women, they were killed. A lot of people there were killed, and then so she goes out. She meets with Anya, and they train. And this is a good time for Buffy to let out some of her anger, where she gets to punch a vampire and get away with it and not be in trouble. But the two talk, and even Buffy says, you're the only one unfortunately, you're the only one I have left to talk to. They talk, they train, and they eat, and they're going over Buffy's deterioration. They're talking about how Buffy, she got a nosebleed the day before. They mentioned that she had her arm broken a couple weeks previous, and they're trying to figure out what's going on with her, why her powers aren't the same. And then suddenly we meet Thessaly. Thessaly gives her name later. But we meet this young lady. She's walking down the street, and a vampire goes to attack her. And she screams out. So Buffy comes, distracts the vampire, and then this young lady, Thessaly, gives the vampire a good punch, I believe, to the stomach. The vampire goes down. Buffy tells him, to get out of here. And then now this young lady wants to follow Buffy, and Buffy's thinking, just get away from me. But she decides, she thinks, I'm going to regret this, but, catch up. And the two are talking, and Thessaly, tells her name is Thessaly, and she says that she believes she might be a slayer. And Buffy says, be careful, because saying that out loud now could get you killed. And the two are talking, and Thessaly doesn't seem like she'd be a vampire slayer. She just seems, she was very hungry to finish off Buffy's burrito that she wanted. Buffy was looking forward to finishing her burrito, but she decided to share it with Thessaly. The two were talking, and then it is revealed who Thessaly is. And to find that out, you'll have to read Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer, issue #1. So that is basically issue #1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. For me, I'm somebody, I knew of the show Buffy. I realized not too long ago that it had a comic book. But, I didn't grow up watching it. I knew of it, didn't watch it, so I had to get familiar with some characters. Even some of them, as I would hear about them and read about them in the story, I would look them up to see who they were, their relation to Buffy, to try to get caught up on the story a little more. But for me, this was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a great way to start off a series. It got you into it. It had action. It got you to want to know more things storylines that you know will continue on throughout the series. I'm very interested to see what fans of the show and of the comic will think of this. If they will watch it, if they've watched before and they'll say, oh, I really don't like this, or oh, I love this continuation. So if there's anybody who is familiar with Buffy, feel free to let us know what you think in the comments below. But for me, for somebody who knows of Buffy, but this is the first time reading a Buffy comic book, I say I really enjoyed Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer, and I'm looking forward to reading issue number 2 and continuing the story. I give Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer issue number 1 an 8.6 out of 10. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen with more of these characters in the story arcs and who else will appear. The characters that I actually do know from Buffy, if more of them will appear in the comic throughout. And I think this is the beginning of something that's going to be really good. So I do recommend Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer. And I will see you all at the next Boom Thursday.